Hey guys, it's Shawn. We're going to zoom in on the Revlon bankruptcy today. We're going to learn some lessons from it. It's always interesting because good litigation can teach you a lot about life and society. I remember in law school, we used to look at cases from the early 1900s with a lot of railroad disputes. Of course, then we had a lot of internet disputes in the early 2000s. Whatever the technology of the day is, really creates a lot of cases and really creates a lot of insights. You learn about society. And right now with the Revlon bankruptcy, I think we can pull a lot of practical lessons out for ourselves, for our businesses, for what we might or might not want to invest in the future. It's really giving us a lot of lessons about the recession, what this recession is going to look like, but also why this may be deeper than usual and why this might be so important. So we're going to jump into it today. It should be an interesting discussion. Hope you get a lot from it. Would love to hear in the comments what your takeaways are from this Revlon bankruptcy and what lessons you've pulled from it. But let me give you some specific things. As always, we're going to talk about legal issues. We're talking about bankruptcy case, but it's not legal advice. It's not tailored to you. It doesn't fit your situation. So consult your lawyer before you do anything. Also, not financial or investment advice, because we certainly will be talking about financial and investment issues as well. It's a mess. And that's a quote from some folks that have been involved in this Revlon bankruptcy litigation. Now, large, high-dollar corporate bankruptcies do tend to be complex, right? You end up getting a lot of different factions coming together in the bankruptcy court. Bankruptcy, you think of it as being probably something, dry and boring, but I will tell you, bankruptcy, not that I've personally been involved in it, but I've been tangentially involved with some of my clients, and some of my clients have been selling to people that have been bankrupt, etc. Bankruptcy litigation can be very complex, and it can bring together a lot of different issues. And the bankruptcy court has a lot of power to administer things and to come up with issues. The Hertz bankruptcy right now has had some interesting throw-offs from it. So, these corporate bankruptcies and corporate deals can teach us a lot about how courts handle things, but also just how players in the economy are seeing things. And that's the quote we have from this case is, "It's a mess." That's what the creditors are saying, right? So what happens in these corporate bankruptcies and what's happening is in Revlon is you have different factions that start to come together that want to take the company in different ways. Obviously, there's some need for change, or else you wouldn't end up in bankruptcy. I mean, if a company had enough assets and cash flow, they would probably try to avoid bankruptcy in the first place, right? They would just power through, they would pay off the debts, they would clean up the balance sheet, they wouldn't end up in bankruptcy. When you end up in bankruptcy, it's just a clear indicator the math didn't work in most cases, right? You are spending more than you're bringing in. You've got to somehow reallocate things. And usually what happens in these cases, creditors get a seat at the table. They're going to try to negotiate what's happening. They're going to end up trying to make their owners, make their interest in the company, which is a debt interest, right? It's an IOU. There's often a movement to convert that to equity or do other things to try to get that IOU paid off, right? So creditors are jockeying to try to either get paid off or to beneficially convert to being owners of the company. Meanwhile, current management's going to try to, preserve their stake and keep where they're going. And then you also have other equity holders out there, whoever owns the company prior to the bankruptcy, right? They're usually sitting there hoping that they'll get something worse, still worse something on the other side. Bankruptcy trustees there to kind of figure out how this is all going to work together, try to collect as much as they can, pay off as much as they can, and then everybody's going to fight out in court as far as who gets what and how that goes, right? So Reuters is saying the bankruptcy is headed for a mess based on the creditor statements, and that's probably true. And here's the interesting part, and I think this is where we draw the lesson that's going to be important for us. It's going to be important for other bankruptcies we see. It's going to be important for our companies as we move through this thing. It's going to be important for managing our personal finances as well. No one today knows what Revlon's worth. And one group of lenders, so we got lenders against lenders, different creditors have teamed up in the pools here. And one lender coalition is saying that the other lenders or the other creditors are trying to seize the company before its value has been determined. And that's really the issue we're going to see throughout this economy. We have a lot of uncertainty on what the back end is going to look like for coming out of this thing. How quickly are sales going to pick up? Will we get back to a normal economy? Will there be lingering issues, right? All of these are open questions that all of us should be asking ourselves. But they all play into the valuation of a company, because typically when you value a company, you look at either future profits, what competitors are doing, how the marketplace looks, right? So real issue here in that nobody knows what this thing is worth, which means how do you figure out how to divide up the pie among the creditors, right? And that's the complaint here of the creditors. We're going to see this over and over again from housing market. With the housing market starting to slow, inventory starting to build, we may have a situation where people don't know what houses are worth, right? These houses may be sitting on the market for a long time, and we may get into an illiquid market, particularly on my other channel, the Future Done Right show, we've covered the slowdown in mortgage applications recently. If people stop applying for mortgages and the days on market keep going up and the market inventory builds and we've got a ton of houses sitting on the market, it's going to be hard to know what houses are really worth, because some of your sales are just going to be people who gave up. Their house was really worth more, but they couldn't wait anymore, right? They had an emergency. Maybe somebody died and the house is sitting vacant. Maybe they had a financial issue and they need to sell the money now, right? You're going to get more and more fire sales, and you're going to have those foreclosure sales. The foreclosure numbers are ticking up. You're going to have them mixed in there, right? All of this is pointing to the fact that we are looking like we're starting to get a dysfunctional market. We definitely have that as a possibility in the not too distant future for the real estate market. And at least according to this coalition of lenders in the Revlon case, they feel like the market is so disorderly that they can't properly value this company. They can't figure out what it's supposed to be worth, so that all the creditors and the leftover stockholders can negotiate some kind of arrangement among themselves to keep this company going forward. And it looks like they're probably going to figure out a way to get this thing going, keep it going. It's just a matter of who's sitting where, what percentages it are, who owes how much what, right? There's a lot of negotiation to be done. And so I think we learn, for the rest of us, that we're coming into a very uncertain and very disorganized market. A lot of the American stock market, a lot of the Western stock market, a lot of our financial markets are based on orderly, right? You go buy a car, you know what a car's worth, right? You can look up history of vehicle sales. House, comparable sales in the neighborhood, pretty good idea what it's worth. Stocks, trading, right? There used to be formulas, right? You would calculate the earnings per share, maybe adjust it, go to EBITDA, and somehow take and figure out what the company is and what it should be worth, right? And there's smart people that are sitting there running computer programs all the time, looking at what companies should be worth and whether the stock's trading too high or too low. That's how Wall Street does it. We as investors may, find a company we think is undervalued and buy into it. So the rest of us, we're headed into a very disorderly market. And that means the potential for loss and the potential for illiquidity too, right? Will your house remain liquid? What about your business too? I know a lot of you that tune in here are either business owners or business leaders. If we can't figure out what Revlon's worth, how do we figure out what your local private business is worth? Especially in an inactive market where dollars may not be flowing. Company may be worth a lot on the end of this downturn, recession, depression, whatever it might be. But if we have a period of illiquidity, you may be in a situation where even though the company has a bright future, you still can't figure out what it's worth right now. And even if you did figure out what it's worth, could you find a buyer? So a lot of lessons here for us. What we need to do now is understand that the market is changing. We are really in a different environment. That means we need to manage our businesses differently. If you're thinking about selling your business, if you can't do it soon, you may be stuck holding on for a while. So you should take that into account in your planning. It's just a very real possibility. Consult your business broker or advisor, talk about your strategy, but it might be a time to hold. For those of you in private investments that have your money tied up in non-stock market investments, whether it's real estate or companies or whatever, again, period of illiquidity coming, possibly. What's that mean for your portfolio? What does it mean for your cash needs? Will you be stuck in some investments for a while? Maybe. If they can't value a publicly traded company and figure out what it's worth in bankruptcy, it's really a big indication that nobody knows where this economy is going and what anything's worth. And the follow-on effects for all of us is going to be a lot of more uncertainty, a lot less liquidity, and just a changing dynamic in the market. So be prepared for that. Love to hear your comments about what you're doing to prepare and what you think. Obviously, don't drop confidential information in there because it is a public forum. But what do you see in the market? Where do you think we're headed? Would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. Drop them below.